Hello and what is going on today, guys? Tomcat here, and welcome to a brand new episode of Stock vs. Tuned in Forza Horizon 4. Now, this is going to be a post-commentated classic style Stock vs. Tuned with a wheel, and we're going to be doing the NSX-R against the AP2 Honda S2000 CR. So, these two cars were suggested by viewers, and this is a battle that actually I was very curious to see who would win, because I'm a big Honda fan, especially of cars like the NSX, the S2000, especially being an S2000 owner. There's definitely something special about doing a battle like this, doing an episode like this with the S2000 in it. But even more than that, the thing that made this battle special was these are Honda's two ultimate flagship cars, and especially of this time period, these were very much halo cars for Honda, and to run them together, I felt like it was only appropriate to use a wheel and pedal setup to represent these cars as accurately as possible with a wheel, 3 pedals, and a shifter. So without any further ado, let's go ahead and jump straight into the stock run of the NSX-R. Now, this car is obviously known for being a pure mid-engine driver's car, and that is definitely accented by using a wheel. You can definitely feel that this car was meant to be a precise instrument, not necessarily a, Hoonigan machine. It feels like a very precise car. I mean, these cars always feel very precise. I was a little slow with my counter steer there and ended up overcooking it a little bit. But, such is the way of things sometimes when you're learning a new car and learning the dynamics of a new car, especially in Forza, because the way you learn is you push it straight to the edge and then see how far over the edge you go. And then, you dial it back a little bit. Now, I tried to kick it out around the roundabout a little bit, and the thing that I kept finding was it kept gripping back up again, and I even tried to kind of put it in second gear and beat on it a little bit, and it still wanted to stay pretty stuck, you know what I mean? It still wanted to stay pretty stuck, and then when it wanted to eventually come out, it would only come out a little bit, as you guys can see. Now, if I laid into it really, really hard, eventually the back end started to come around, but as you can see in the wheel cam, I'm having to kind of, bring it back very, very quickly because there's not much momentum left there and there's not enough power there to keep the rear tires spinning. So that ended up being the roundabout verdict for this car, but the one that we're actually interested in is the speed trap verdict. So pulling up to the line was it was an interesting moment because I was like, how much faster is this actually going to be than a stock AP2? I figured it would be faster because it's more powerful, but I couldn't really pinpoint how much faster it was actually going to be. Now, I will also say, if you try to shift this car fast, you're going to have a bad time. Forza definitely wants you to shift this car slow. When I was practicing with it, it definitely punished you for shifting, really quickly. It wants you to shift it relaxed. It wants you to be deliberate and slow with the shifting and the clutch. And that actually got us a trap speed of 146 miles an hour, which is pretty good if you consider the fact that this car runs a naturally aspirated V6 engine. So it's nothing, mind-blowing. It's not some sort of otherworldly hypercar engine. It's just an NAV6. And considering the fact that we were still able to do 146 miles an hour through the speed trap with it is pretty dang impressive in my book. So without any further ado, let's move on to the stock run of the S2000 CR. Now, the S2000 CR is the ultimate factory S2000. CR stands for Club Racer, and I grinded the crap out of the first couple of gears because I wasn't used to the shifting jumping into this from the NSX. So I do want to apologize for that because I'm sure someone is going to say something about that grinded gear. But the game also wants you to be pretty deliberate and slow with the shifting on this car, and that's kind of the way it is with a lot of these. It's almost like the game wants you to be very delicate with it when you're using a clutch and a shifter. But this car was easier to catch going sideways than the NSX was, which makes sense because the NSX is a bigger car that's also mid-engined, and not really, see, it's not really the bigger car part that makes it harder to catch. It's more the mid-engine part. It's not necessarily that it's harder, it's just the fact that I'm more used to catching a mid or front mid car that's sliding sideways than I am, you know, a rear mid setup, because the S2000, since the engine is behind the front axle, it's technically front mid, not just front engine, so it's kind of, the balance point is in a slightly different place. But as you can see, when the back end does come out, it's quite smooth and it's fairly easy to catch. And so with that being said, you know, occasionally I would give it a little clutch kick. I mean, you guys can see right here, I'm giving it some clutch kicks every once in a while, and you just have to make sure you're under a certain speed threshold, otherwise the clutch kicks won't really do anything. But if you make sure you're under that speed threshold, you'll be okay. Now, the launch came out pretty well, didn't have much wheel spin, got it off the line pretty easily, and that is one thing that I really like about driving with a wheel and pedals, is the fact that you really can dial in where you want that launch to be, where you want to release the clutch, how much throttle you want to give it, and exactly how much throttle you want to give it, not just, you know, a tiny little, you know, millimeter of difference on the trigger of a controller. So that is one of the nice things about actually launching a car with a wheel and pedals. But we ran 134, and 134 is actually really good. I mean, if you consider the fact that, I mean, this is a 4-cylinder sports car, so we're running 134 miles an hour through a speed trap, I would say that's pretty freaking good, and I have a lot of respect for it if it can do that. But without any further ado, and without any more grinded gears, we're going to head back to the shop and see what kind of power she can make within the restrictions of the NSX-R's power level. So the build of the S2000 was mainly based around obviously adding engine power as well as adding a couple of grip mods, because we didn't have all that much PI to work with. And that's what makes doing these cars that are really close in PI so much fun, because you really have to be careful about where you spend your PI and where you use your PI in accordance with how much, you know, you actually, like how much room you have. Because if you give a car all the handling mods and then you try to race it, you're not really going to do very well, considering the fact that this is a straight line based test. Now, if it was a circuit based stock versus tuned, that would be very different, but with this particular show, we're focusing a lot more on straight line performance. Now, I have had some requests to do some more circuit based or corner based, handling based stock versus tuned episodes, and I've definitely considered it. And if you guys are really interested in seeing that, I will be totally down to do it, and it will also be something that I could do with a wheel, and something that I think I would really enjoy doing with a wheel. Now, I didn't want to go full width on the rear tires because I wanted to have at least a little bit of give. I didn't want to, you know, bog the car down. Since we're not making tremendous power, we're just making a little bit more than stock, and I went with a very tried and true wheel on this car. I figured that the TE37, it was impossible to go wrong, and you put it on the car, and it's like, the car's just good. Like, it's literally just good. It's done. It's good. You don't have to touch it again. Your wheels are finished. And honestly, that's kind of the way it is with, you know, TE37s on a lot of JDM cars. I mean, even some cars that aren't JDM, you throw a set of TE37s on them, and they look so right. They look so at home. I mean, it's the original style for that whole category of wheel. You know what I mean? That whole blocky category of wheel. The TE37 is the OG of that category, pretty much. But heading back out onto the road, I figured it was time to see what this car could do once the PI was as closely matched to the NSX as we could get it. So we're making a little bit more horsepower, well, I would say a little bit more than a little bit more, but the main thing we did was increase the red line with a set of race cams. So we're revving much higher now, over 9,000 RPM, and this thing absolutely screams. Now, I can definitely shift it a little bit faster now, and the rear end is a little bit more manageable under load at high speed, because we've got a little bit more power to modulate it with. Like, if we need to add a little bit more power to kind of keep an oversteer situation going, we can. It's also easier to clutch kick it because of the increased power. But as you'll see up here on the roundabout, this car has become very lively with this setup, and very lively in a good way. And you'll see what I mean by that in just a second here. So it flicks very easy one way and then flicks back the other way very, very easily, but it's also quite catchable. So I was playing with the steering angle here just to see what the car liked, and as you can see, I went a little bit far there, but I kind of came back to try it again. And once you find that sweet spot that the car likes, you really can, you know, kind of get into a nice rhythm with it. Now, since this car doesn't have a ton of steering angle, you're not going to look like you're, you know, driving some sort of crazy Formula D car, but at the end of the day, it is a lot of fun still to slide around in because it's a very precise car. It's a very on its toes type car. You're not going to be, you know, doing massive sideways 90-degree smoke shows with it, but that's not what it's for. This car is much more for enjoying the technical aspects of driving rather than, you know, like I said before, putting on some sort of like sideways smoke show. But with that being said, let's get to the highway run. So as you can see, acceleration is dramatically improved over the stock variant, and at this point I was feeling pretty hopeful that we were going to beat the NSX's speed. And one grinded gear later, we did, with over 150 miles an hour, which makes this car very, very fast considering the parts that are in it. So if you guys enjoyed this episode of Stock vs. Tuned with a Wheel, make sure to click that like button. Let me know in the comments below what you guys thought of it, and let me know what cars you would like to see next on the Stock vs. Tuned series. And if you would like to check out any of the gear that I've used in this video, links will be in the description box down below.